Okay. So, Open Space Advisory Committee, Chair Kimbrough,
Here.
Vice Chair Inverson,
Here.
Member Martinovich,
Here.
Member Gigliari, Member Burge, Member Wiggins, Member Mozinga? No? Parks and Rec Commission, Chair Keever,
Here.
Vice Chair Meyer,
Here.
Commissioner Case,
Here.
Commissioner Whitefield, Commissioner Schutte,
Here.
Commissioner Caldwell,
Here.
Commissioner Walt. A quorum's present.
We don't have a quorum? Yeah, we have a quorum with 4 of us here.
Yes, you do.
It's all right. Okay, next on the agenda is public comments. And I want to first say that tonight you'll have an opportunity under each agenda item to make public comments. We've come to the, after a lot of discussion, make sure that happens. So that, here's a chance though that we usually give people who aren't, that don't have something to talk about with the agenda can speak now, but if you want to, you can still speak, but it's always better when it's the agenda item. So is there anybody who wants to make comments from the public? Come on up, ma'am. Please identify yourself. When you come up and turn on the mic, push the little button. There you go.
Good afternoon. My name is Coco Green. My topic is memorials. And what I'm talking about is a friend of ours, Lee Wong, died on August the 19th, 2022. She was an excellent tennis player, caring friend, and she advocated actively to have the courts at Ross Gold tennis courts resurfaced. I walked over to the Park and Rec department and I was able to talk to Dave Navarro when I submitted my memorial request, and he steered me towards a bench plaque, which was a lot better than what I had requested. Anyway, I talked to our friends and we had a little bit of editing to do, but in any case, I haven't heard anything back for several months. So on April the 24th, I walked over to the office again and submitted a second request. And this time I was better in the sense that I asked for a bench plaque to be put on an existing bench with 2 lines in memory of, and the bottom line saying Lee Wong. I haven't heard anything since, so that's why I'm here. If I can get some sort of answer, reply, anything. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hang on a sec, Danny. Let me think about that for a second. Okay, I'm looking for some guidance here. So
I'd
you
like
guys-
to add too that Lee Wong was somebody I played with, and she died of a heart attack at James Mee tennis court.
Oh, wow.
It was very shocking for all of us who were there. We tried to do some resuscitation, but it didn't work.
Wow.
So that's why Coco wants to, and her friends, there's a large group of people who would like to have a plaque in Lee's name, and I'm very supportive of the idea. Thank you.
Well, I heard from the boss essentially that they'll follow up and make sure, Coco, something happens this
Oh,
time.
thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, you bet. All right, Dan, you can come up now.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada, Chair and committee and committees. I'm sorry, commissioners, excuse me. Today I'm a little confused. The research I did just confused me more in several areas. I'm concerned about Ash Canyon Creek. And Ash Canyon Creek has a development going up to the north of it from Longview Lane. And its developer has not been conscientious about the concerns I've had about the creek being in a bad position as far as runoff from their properties. And I've got Stephen Boutte from the planning division, and he's involved, and I just want to put eyes on it because he has only so many teeth that he can put into it, but I want to encourage the city to watch that very closely. They did go in and make some corrections since I had brought it up and put it on a formal statement, and so that's good. Pote and them are dealing with that. So this is not trying to overstep them or suggest that they're not doing something, but that I think that that particular developer should have close eyes on him. He's not been very conscientious about his endeavors around the creek, and with this big storm, there was quite a bit of wash off into the creek itself. And then I have another question as to what part of that is open space, what part will be considered parks, and then I have a comment about the loop that's right there. They've put a slurry seal over that area and a yellow stripe down it. It smells to high heaven of asphalt type remains, and it's ugliest thing I've seen in a long time put in a beautiful place. And the decomposed granite would be a better way to, I got it. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to say that, but in the future, I would like to see that in lieu of covering the old asphalt, because the old asphalt had changed color and neutralized into this, the look to the aesthetics, and was at least reasonably tolerable. And it's nice to have a space you can ride or do a stroller on, as a friend of mine suggested, that it does help when you're trying to get around with family. And I appreciate the fact, since I've been in a wheelchair in my life, that access would be accessible. But on decomposed granite, it can also be accessible with the right kind of tires. But I just would like you all to take a look. I think then they put a big pad right next to where they have a picnic area, asphalt type pad. And I'm going, okay, a whole bunch of cities have started cutting down on their asphalt use and slurry seals and such, and are trying to replace it with other materials. And I really would like open space to consider every path that they have differently from making it a road or something so obtrusive as those pathways are now, as far as aesthetics, but the smell and the heat that they're going to be generating right next to a picnic table. And you've got trees that you're going to counter that. So you're trying to build shade, but yet you're putting a heat collector right in the middle of it. I don't get the logic of that. So please sort of consider that when you're doing all this slurry sealing. It's nasty looking, it smells awful for quite a while. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Anybody else to come up for public comment at this point? No? Seeing none, bring it back to the committee for approval of the minutes that I have in this package for Let's Do Open Space, and then Parks can do theirs. Do I get any changes or a motion?
I'll move for approval.
A second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimous. Parks?
Has everybody had a chance to read our minute? Yes. Read our minutes from our April 4th meeting? Yes. All right. Are there any changes or additions? No? All right. In that case, I'll entertain a motion. Okay. Commissioner Caldwell made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Vice Chair seconded it. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. The motion carries. Thank you so much. Back to you.
Great. Well, looks like we get to move to the action items now. Item 5A. This is for discussion only. This is a presentation from the Carson City Park Rangers regarding activities throughout parks and open space. And John Costello is going to take the lead here. Thanks, John. Overtime, buddy, I guess, huh?
Good evening. Thank you. I think that was taken by one of our full-time park rangers, Danielle Sattler. For the record, my name is John Costello. I'm the senior park ranger with Carson City Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. And this is a brief presentation on what the rangers have been up to in the last year. We have some nice pictures of some of the trainings that we've been going to, as well as our interpretive programs. This presentation, I know in the past we've They've been pretty data-driven, and we wanted to kind of spruce it up a little bit and put more pictures. And at the end, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have after the presentation. So we'll go ahead and get started. I thought I knew how to work it. This one?
Hold, please.
Which one did you hit?
Enter.
Okay. So back in November, the Carson City Park Rangers went through a crisis intervention training with the sheriff's office. It was a 40-hour course that we went through, and crisis intervention is important for our positions because we often deal with individuals out in the field that are going through a crisis. So this was the first time that we had done a training like this, and in the almost 8 years that I've been on with the department, I think this was probably the most beneficial training that I've gone through. Like I said, it was a 40-hour training course with the Carson City Sheriff's Office, and it wasn't just the Sheriff's Office that was doing the training. They brought in a lot of outside expertise in for the training. So it was a really beneficial course that we went through, and just the training was geared towards how to provide resources, how to interact with individuals that are going through crisis, because as I said, it is something that we do deal with the unhoused population that we deal with, not just with them, but with other populations as well. So I thought that was a really beneficial training that we went through. Ranger Excellence School, it's got a kind of a funny name to it, but we went to that recently back in May in Colorado. It was in Estes Park, Colorado. Myself and our new full-time ranger, Danielle Sattler, went through the training. It was a 5-day training course. It's essentially a compacted ranger academy, if you want to look at it in terms of post and law enforcement training. It was more geared towards enforcement. Initially, Ranger Excellence School was geared towards Larimer County Natural Resources, their seasonal rangers, because they have a pretty extensive program. They have, I believe, 45 seasonals that went through the training, and then there were around 15 outside agencies that had full-time rangers. We were obviously one of those outside agencies that went through the training. There were rangers from all over the country, New York, New Jersey, Georgia, a lot on the West Coast, obviously. But it was a great training that we went through that focuses on your common certifications. And I think the most beneficial part of the training was the Friday before we all graduated. The training was where we did a full day of scenarios. And I think, scenarios are really important for our position because we're not post-certified, so we don't get that luxury of having those set state standards and training curriculum like peace officers have. So that was really important for us to be able to go through that scenario training on that Friday, because the entire training was focused around officer safety. It was a lot of law enforcement training, emotional survival, how to handle certain situations anytime, we're not, we have a lot of fun parts of our job. Obviously, I'm going to get into those pictures with the interpretive programs, but we do encounter some difficult situations out in the field, and they provided the tools on how to, better handle those types of situations. So that was a really valuable training, and now all of our park rangers at this point have all gone through that training. Maintenance tasks. This is another part of our duties as park rangers for Carson City. We have interpretive programming, maintenance tasks, and enforcement. This is obviously a big part of our job. Where we go around to different locations throughout the town and do trash can service, dog waste station service, illegal dump site cleanup, which I think has, it's few and far between at this point. When I first started almost 8 years ago, it seemed like it was every day I was doing a legal dump site cleanup, and so that's improved, which is good. Graffiti removal, fence installation, sign installation, and illegal camp cleanup. So those are some of the maintenance tasks that the rangers deal with on really a weekly basis. Tails and Trails Dog Adoption Event. The Nevada Humane Society teamed up with Carson City Parks and Recreation Department. 3 out of 4 dogs were adopted in February 2022. This is now, since then, we've done this program, I want to say 3 times now. And Lisa Schuette's been a big help with that event as well. And I think each time that we do the event, we're looking to improve it and maybe potentially move it inside because the winter months, especially with this last winter that we had, we're figuring out maybe a better solution because, we want to try to get as many dogs adopted as possible. That's kind of how we gauge success on the program, is how many dogs get adopted. So it's always fun to get other organizations involved like Cassie, Nevada Humane Society, and then I believe CWSD was at the last one as well. So that's a really impactful program that I would like to see grow to the point where we have more of the community come out and get to take the dogs on a walk and potentially adopt them. Lone Mountain Cemetery Tour. This is a popular tour, especially around Halloween. So this is a program that we started a few years ago, and it's grown quite a bit. This is one of our more popular programs, and participants made their way around the cemetery, stopping at famous historical figure, burial sites, and learning about their lives. They were able to learn about Henry Marvin Yerington, P.H. Clayton, Hank Monk, and other influential people from this area. So that's always a popular program that we're able to do at Lone Mountain Cemetery because a lot of our interpretive programs, it just sets up better for a lot of our open space areas. We try to incorporate as many parks and other facilities that don't get as much notoriety, and we try to include those. So the cemetery tours have been a hit for sure. Junior Ranger Day, I think this is probably one of my favorite events that we do because we can involve other agencies around this area. Washoe County Rangers came down this year, as well as state parks. And it's an event dedicated to the kids of the community that can come and, learn what it is to be a park ranger. They can get sworn in as junior park rangers. We have a great junior ranger adventure guide that one of our park rangers, Tyler Curver, created, and we update it every year. And he's really great with that, and that's something that the kids really enjoy. We're able to fill out the junior ranger adventure guide with them, as well as give out stickers and then any other swag that any other agencies bring, like Washoe County and things like that. So I think this is one of the most impactful programs that we do with the kids. Galaxy Talk is another one that has become pretty popular, and we actually reached out to a WNC professor that has been helping us with this event. Anytime that we can bring in somebody that is an expert in that area for any of our interpretive programs, we jump at that opportunity because, we feel like the public gets the most out of those programs when we bring somebody in that is an expert in that field. So that's another program that's been really popular out at Silver Saddle Ranch. End-to-End Prison Hill Patrol. We just recently did this a couple months ago, and this was the longest hike that the park rangers had ever offered to the community. It was a 6-mile hike from the north end of Prison Hill to the south end of Prison Hill. And we started at the 5th Street Trailhead parking lot and ended at the OHV staging area at Golden Eagle. And it was about 4 hours in duration. And, typically our programs are anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours, just because, we want to be respectful of everybody's time. But this was something that was requested by members of the public who had come to our interpretive programs and wanted to do a longer hike. So it was a really successful hike. We got a great day out on Prison Hill, and we had 10 participants for the program. And Kids to Parks Day, we just had on May 20th. We had 25 participating organizations and partners for the event, along with 8 sponsors. As far as organization involvement goes, this was our biggest Kids to Park stay yet. So we've continued to grow it each year. I think the first Kids to Park stay that we had was 4 years ago, and we had it out at Silver Saddle. It was on a really small scale, and now we have it out at Mills Park, and it's a pretty good size event. We included the mayor. She kind of kicked off the event with the Kids to Park Stay proclamation, and we had Bon Appetit barbecue food truck as well as Scoops ice cream there. So it was a really successful event. We had a beautiful day on May 20th, and the kids really enjoyed that. And that was another day where they could fill out their Junior Ranger adventure guides and get sworn in as Junior Park Rangers. So that was a lot of fun. We had Junior Ranger Olympics as well. So if any of you are interested next year, you'll have to come in and race us. We had our park ranger race a kid. That's the picture in the slide. So we had fun with that at Mills Park. And that is the end of my presentation. And I always talk more than I want to.
You did just perfect, actually. So questions, comments? I'll start on the right. There you go. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that presentation. I have, I think, like 3 questions. You mentioned that there's no state standards for park ranger training. Did I hear you right there?
Yeah, so that's actually something that I've been working on with Jen and Dave, kind of developing our own standards and requirements for the position, because because I've worked with other agencies that aren't post-certified, and anytime that you're not a post-certified officer, you have to either have established a training curriculum or standards that you set in place yourself, that city sets in place for the Rangers. So that's something that we've been working on, specific policies for our position. So that's something that I've reached out to the Post Commission for, because in California, they have something called PC 8132, and that is something that it goes over laws and gives you certain powers as a park ranger, but it's not a full-blown post-certification. So I reached out to the Post Commission to find out if there was anything in Nevada that we could go off of, because Washoe County Rangers, any municipality that isn't a part of the state, deals with the same issue where they don't have those set standards similar to Post. So I would like to create something that is, on a much smaller scale, obviously, something that's appropriate for our department. And I think including trainings like Ranger Excellence School is a good start to that, because I've really worked with them because they've been an established program for, I think, 80 years. And so they have things that are, that have gone through their DA's office and they're constantly updating. And that's something that I've worked with them on in ultimately developing that for our program.
Nice. I love a good policies and procedures development. Count me in. I'm fully supportive of that, by the way, and would love to help in any way possible. I think that fits with my next question on that CIT, the crisis intervention training. Are there plans to continue that, like ongoing, and do continuing education and make sure that that's standard for any park rangers that come on?
Yeah, I don't believe that there's CEUs set by the sheriff's office, but that's something that I would like to include. I haven't really talked to Dave or Jen about this, but I think it is something that we could include in the job description, because there are a lot of trainings and requirements that we have that aren't necessarily in the job description. Like certified interpretive guide is another one that all of the Rangers for Carson City have, but it's not something that's necessarily on the job description. Just because, those trainings are so vital to what we do, because the CIG certification just isn't for interpretive programs. It really gives you the tools if you're not great with communicating with people outside in the field when you're making those contacts. It really helps there as well. So I think we're taking those steps because, with a department that doesn't have those set training standards like Post, we have to get creative and include those CIT trainings, the CIG trainings, or trainings like Ranger Excellence School. So I think that's something that going forward is certainly going to be a requirement for our full-time rangers.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And maybe a question for Jen. Is that something that we can do would it be a joint or a Parks Department only, or a subcommittee that would work on standards for park rangers, or is that something that happens internally?
Well, I think it would probably be, Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I think it'd be something we'd probably work with Human Resources with, but probably an internal policy that would go through HR and the city manager if we needed to. But we would go about it the way that John mentioned. We look at, national training and the resources that they've taken from Ranger Excellence School and other areas. We have a really good network of the Parks and Rec departments throughout Nevada. We can find out what other agencies in the state are doing, so that way they're already dealing with Nevada revised statutes and there's certain limits, so we're not looking at other states that may have different statutes that wouldn't even be applicable here. But it would probably be an internal department policy.
Thank you, and thanks for letting me ask so many questions.
That's all right. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you for the presentation. And, I really am just so impressed with the initiative of this department and in terms of ranger education. And, being a park ranger, I think it's frequently misunderstood, the role of park ranger and how involved it really is. And so 4 rangers are balancing a lot of responsibilities, and something I am so appreciative of is it's not just about the enforcement side, but it's really about the community side and embracing opportunities and taking the kids out or families out or adults out, whatever, for these interpretive walks, hikes, the star, gazing and teaming with WNC, the adoption events, all of that. So I am just so appreciative and impressed by that. And I agree with Leah in terms of, personally, I want to be as supportive as I can, that whole crisis intervention and, talking about emotional survival and dealing with people who are facing different hardships, whether it's lack of housing or emotional issues, frustrations, anger, misunderstanding, all the above. I mean, you find yourself in a situation that sometimes, especially not being a post-certified and not having that to fall back on, it puts you in a tough situation. So you have a lot of support up here, and please know that.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the right side? No? I'll look this way. Donna, oh wait, let's stay with Jay down at the end.
Jay Wiggins for the record. Great presentation, really enjoyed it. I'm fairly new to this environment. So I actually got a little sad when you didn't have the statistics and the data. So just one slide though, you don't have to do a whole presentation on it. But to be more general, what if you did have those stats in just a high level, what things are improving in your opinion, and what things are potentially getting worse from your standpoint?
Yeah, and I'm happy, like I said, to answer any questions. I could always follow up with an email with some of those statistics, because typically when we do a presentation like this, we'll put in data for the amount of illegal dump sites that we clean up, the amount of how many contacts we make with dog off leash, contacts with individuals that are in an area where you're not allowed to have a dog. Obviously, we've all went through the revision of the dog policy, but I would say things are definitely improving. And where I see the improvement the most is making those contacts out in the field and just educating the public. To Lisa's point, we talk a lot about enforcement, but we are education first. We always will be. And I think we do a lot of preventative enforcement through our interpretive programs. I've seen a drastic change in the amount of illegal dumping that we have cleaned up, I would say everywhere, but specifically the open space areas. That picture that's up there is of Carson River Canyon. And when I first started, there were probably 4 or 5 camping trailers that were back in there. Back in the canyon, people were going out there and shooting illegally pretty consistently, illegal dumping. You know, if you were to go back there today, you might see a few holes in our signs, but you're not going to see a camping trailer or many illegal dump sites. And I think that the park ranger's presence in those areas makes a difference with the staffing. Because when I first started, we had 2 full-time park rangers. And then for a period of time, we also had a seasonal. I was the only full-time park ranger. Now we have 3 full-time park rangers. And we have another position that's open right now that actually ends July 1. So we're going to be hiring on another full-time park ranger. And, the more, it's the common theme for really everything. The more staff, the more we can do. And, I think I've felt that support, that you guys have talked about. And, I get great support from our department as well. And I've seen improvements in a lot of those areas, but specifically, I would say with dump sites and the contacts that we're able to make, that preventative enforcement, so that it's not becoming a problem later down the road.
Go ahead, Susan.
I really appreciate, and thank you to my colleague, because I like data too. So I really like the preventative enforcement. And I was laughing when I saw your maintenance tasks about dog waste station service. I went out today and saw a bunch of bags tied to a chain link fence, and I was really agitated. It's like, what's wrong with these people? Why can't they put the waste into the garbage can that was right next door? And so I was going to go do that, and it's like, oh my God, they're all empty. Whoever put those bags there is awesome in order to provide that preventative enforcement. And then just a comment, the conversation on certification. I appreciate and totally support all the skills and to have that. You said something, though, about making it a requirement of the position, and I would get a little nervous about that. If you're having trouble filling the position, consider not adding it as a requirement, but maybe something that you'll do once they get into the position, because then you might be limiting a lot of people who don't have the ability to get that certification. So just a comment. Thank you.
Yeah, and to address that, I think that is probably part of the reason that we leave it off the job description, because a lot of those trainings that we've been going through, like CIT and Ranger Excellence School, we provide those once the individual's already on with our agency. So yeah, I think, that's a great point.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, I want to say, I remember when you were first brought on board. I'm old enough, long enough here, and the change has been remarkable. You've done a great job, John, and so has your staff. And I remember the old dump sites. I was involved in a lot of those cleanups myself. And it's just been a great improvement, and it's wonderful. And I do want to ask, how has it been since the new dog policy has been put in place? Have you had a lot of pushback, or are things improving?
I will tell you from an enforcement standpoint that it has made our jobs a little easier, because a lot of the areas that we weren't allowing dogs, I know Mills Park gets talked about a lot, but Mills Park specifically, we weren't allowing dogs, and we were constantly having to go out to Mills Park to make contact with somebody that had their dog there. And they're still taking their dogs there, and they're on leash. And, now we are to the point where we can educate those individuals that they need to keep their dog on leash. And to the point of the dog policy, we've updated our signage. We put mutt mitts now out at Mills Park, so the signage accurately reflects the change. So I think, I think ultimately, since the change has been made and since we've updated the signage, I think it's made our jobs a lot easier. because of the consistency. And, you know, the public was pretty involved with that policy change. And I think they know that, you know, they can take their dogs to certain areas now. They just have to have them on leash. So that has been an improvement.
We did. Thanks, John. I actually liked your color, but I want to be with a couple folks that mentioned maybe you could use really colorful graphs with your data so you could get a combo program moving.
I can do that.
Okay, we can do that. So have a history with law enforcement without weapons, we called it. Teach you how to encounter, and I love the fact that you've been given support to get these trainings, because that's not cheap to go to Colorado for a week. So it's critical, I think, for the staff and for you guys to be out in the field that you're allowed that. I was out searching all the time, and I think I went to Idaho State Rangers didn't used to have guns. I don't know if they do today or not. So they had some really good requirements for their staff that they had to attend every year. And then there was a junior college down in near San Jose somewhere called West Coast that had trained a whole ton of the cities and county rangers there, and they had a law enforcement without weapons training session. So they're out there, so that might help you build that template. But I think that's critical without the weapon to understand how to approach and make approaches, especially in the critical situation where you have, you know, a person that might not all be there, that you need to know when not to encounter that or when to stop the communication immediately and back away. I mean, even if you're a full law enforcement officer, if you have a mental person, you're bringing all the people you can in to help you, even if it's just one person. So you know that as a law enforcement, you've advanced their program up much better, and it's really on. I think a lot of accolades needs to go to you and the staff supporting you, but you're driving along that, John. So it works well, and brings camaraderie to the rangers, and it teaches them all how to properly make these approaches to all these people that you do. So I applaud all that. And do you guys do EMS too?
So our level of medical training, we do adult first aid, CPR, AED. We've never went, I would say in the 7.5 years I've been on, I think the highest level of medical training that I received was wilderness first aid. That's something that we've had conversations with in the past with Carson City Fire Department about potentially going to EMR. The individual I talked with Carson City Fire didn't know how necessary that was for our position. You know, we have talked about that, going that further in that direction and getting more medical training. Since we're not post-certified, you know, we're going to try to get as much training as we can in the other areas that we deal with. So that's something that's been discussed, but we go through adult first aid, CPR, AED training every year through the city. And then a lot of the trainings that we actually go to, like Ranger Excellence School, they provided CPR first aid, because that's the standard for the most part for a lot of these park ranger programs throughout the country. There are some, like Larimer County, they actually are EMR. But that is something that we've discussed. But as of right now, our highest level of medical training is CPR, first aid, AED.
That was just to let everybody know that you guys also carry that responsibility too. So the ABCs is what you kind of chase, because those are the things that can happen the quickest. So that was just to enlighten everybody. And then one of the things that you don't have to do is a lot of the agencies now with law enforcement post, you hire somebody, you don't see them the first 6 months, they're gone. So that's kind of unique. You can get that done after they've been on the ground and working with you for a while. So just a lot of accolades for a lot of good programs and good presentation. And thanks, John.
Thank you
very much. Okay, if we're done with questions, it's public comment section now. So we'll bring the public up if they have comments to this agenda item.
Commissioners, Denny French, Carson City. Ranger Costello. I worked quite a few years for Mission Plaza in Ventura as a security officer. I had to take the initiative for myself to get extra training, hand-to-hand and such like that, but also relating to 5150s, as we referred to people that were not necessarily going to be able to communicate with me on a logical or a whatever basis. And it was very important. And I'm so pleased that you've had support in getting that, because it was my responsibility myself to get that, which was a big expense at $8 an hour to try to support. So, and I appreciate your presentation. My EMT training that I took self-initiative just because I had nieces and nephews, but I never intended to go into it. I would encourage whomever wants to go into that they be encouraged through the job to pursue that if it sets with their schedule. I'm concerned about the HOV situation. I don't think we have rangers enough, and maybe ranger wouldn't necessarily be necessary on those particular trail areas, but education more and get the groups that are doing the crawlers and different things together and get to an educational type situation like you're having. But to have you be part of that so that they self-regulate, because they really do want to have that available. And my concerns about specific areas will be addressed, I think, maybe in another comment. But the main thing is, I just appreciate the effort and the fact that you're out there. I was in a nice cuddly spot where shop owners might see an issue and they could call if I couldn't get to my backup. I had a lot of support unless I got in an alleyway, which was when I was in the most danger. But unarmed security, being present, making yourself known. Are you allowed to give out citations for people that are,
Hey, Denny, I'm sorry.
oh, my time.
No, it's not about your time. It's about your presentation to us rather than, I know that,
I know the
I
formality.
know you know John, but you need to
No.
speak to us. There you go.
Well, and I appreciate that, and sometimes I think those things have to be relaxed to have real communication, and
Well,
so
he's listening.
but I usually look a person in the eye when I'm talking, so I know if they're, we are communicating. That's one of the things I learned about, it's like you don't stare a dog down that's growling at you. You look away. He's not growling at me.
That
Yeah.
works for dogs.
Yeah, but I'm saying, though, in this case, I can look him in the eye. I would prefer to. So I understand your rules, and I will try to abide by them. But I just really appreciate him very much for the fact that he's dealing with situations. But I do have concerns that they're being spread very thin, especially on the Prison Hill area. And those areas are very sensitive and in danger. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, bring it back to the board, the commissions, committees, one of those three. Whatever the group. It was a non-action item for discussion only. So we go to 5B for discussion only, presentation from the volunteer coordinator, Chelsea, to come up and give her presentation. We'll see if it's all nice and in color. I think I've seen it. It's nice, too. They've raised the bar of presentation.
It was already there. For the record, my name is Chelsea Kinchlow, and I am the volunteer coordinator for Carson City Parks Rec and Open Space, and I am excited to present to you on the volunteer program with our department this evening, and thank you guys for being here. I'm going to start with a little bit of background, maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe. I hit enter. It just needs to think for a minute. Oh, there we go. Yeah, just to give you guys a little bit of background about this position. So in 2018, I was hired as the very first AmeriCorps Vista volunteer coordinator. So in my role for 1 year, it was my job to develop a volunteer program. And so when my term ended, we then passed that off to Mackenzie, and she was hired later on in 2019 till 2020. Unfortunately, Mackenzie got the brunt of COVID, and so I don't think she was as successful as she would have wanted to be in developing the program, but she still did get a lot of things done during that time. And then we have a bit of a gap up until 2022 when Amy was brought on, and she was only a 6-month term service member for AmeriCorps. So myself and Mackenzie were both a year, and Amy was only 6 months. And then come full circle, here I sit before you, hired as the full-time volunteer coordinator with the department. So to give you guys a bit of an idea about the funding breakdown, so it's 90.6% open space and 10% parks. So if you guys have any questions about that, we can ask that at the end. To kind of give you guys an overall mission, so we have our department's mission is to provide exceptional parks, open spaces, and diverse recreational opportunities to enhance the quality of life in Carson City while preserving our natural resources for future generations. I have been working on my own volunteer manual and creating a mission statement for my program. And we are dedicated to engaging and educating the public in their communities' public lands through volunteerism. Through these practices, members of Carson City will become better stewards of their environment while educating and encouraging those around them to care for their local public lands. And that's like my really big overarching goal, is getting more people involved in our public lands and caring for them. Thinking about those past challenges, so you guys kind of noticed there was some gaps in the volunteer coordinator, so hiring and getting them onboarded, and then, as we all know, a year is not really a long enough time to develop a program, and so me passing it off to the next volunteer coordinator, then having that gap, and then having just a 6-month, it's kind of been a mixed bag of things that we've been doing since 2018. And so each coordinator also kind of had their own vision for the program, which is great, and they kind of did what they thought would work best. And so all of our data is a bit scattered in terms of what has been working and what hasn't been working. And so that's one of the things I will also be focusing on. And then obviously COVID-19 decreased our volunteer opportunities quite a bit. And it's been a bit of a slow bounce back, but I think we're getting there. I think we're getting more volunteers engaged. So looking at those past events, pretty standard. As John mentioned, lots of dump sites. And so we've also been focusing our volunteer efforts on trash cleanups, cottonwood wrapping down along the river. That's to protect the cottonwoods against beavers from cutting them down. We've had a lot of Eagle Scout projects, and they've done various projects. That one, the third one up on the right-hand side there, that is a volunteer raising the headstones at Lone Mountain Cemetery. And so that was an Eagle Scout project. We also had another Eagle Scout project where they redid the trailhead at McKay Drive for Sea Hill, and that was completely all free. They brought in their own contractors. I think the Eagle Scouts parent was a contractor, and so they brought in all their heavy machinery and did it themselves. So the Eagle Scouts have done so much for this department, and it's pretty incredible. And they continue to do it, and we have a lot of trail projects going on right now with them. We've also had disc golf maintenance cleanups out there, or just helping rebuild the infrastructure, rebuilding trail out there. And we've done a lot of like public events, and then there's also just groups who reach out to us and are interested in volunteering with our department. Here's some data for you guys. Yes. The value of volunteers. So I think this is something that is really important for everyone to remember, is that for every hour that a volunteer serves, there is a monetary amount that goes with it. So you can see in 2018, we started off at $25.43, and that has slowly been increasing up until 2023, and we're at $31.80. And I'm not exactly sure how you calculate that. I'm assuming it has to do with cost of living and hourly wages across the nation. Yeah. So that is a 6.2% increase from 2021. So it is going up pretty substantially. And Lisa, you're featured there with Ranger Kerber. So looking at what I've been up to since I took on this position in September of 2022, Obviously, the winter derailed all of my plans for a while. We were working on installing duck boxes along the riparian corridor with Ducks Unlimited, but that just kept getting pushed back and pushed back. And now we will hopefully do that sometime this fall. And so we're very excited still for that project and keep apologizing to our project partners about everything that's been happening. But if you guys look in that upper left-hand corner, that's Troop 341. That's an Eagle Scout project. They just finished building the Express Trail up on Prison Hill, and that's at the Kuntz Trailhead. And so that's a little short connector that will take you up to the North Loop. And so Troop 341, I believe, is ending this year, which is very unfortunate. So that's where a lot of like the Eagle Scout projects for the remainder of the year are coming from at this time. It's just them trying to get more of their projects done. In the bottom left-hand corner is the Move with the Mayor event that we did last October. And that was a humongous turnout. That was like 122 volunteers, groups, individuals, and it was just a big mass cleanup and beautification of Lone Mountain Cemetery. And that was just an incredible turnout, and the mayor really knows how to get the community going. And so I'm excited to work with her on any additional projects that she has in mind for the future. In the upper top photo, we have a group called Friends of Prison Hill. They're an OHV group, and they go out and they will do cleanups. And so they just bring a truck out, fill it with trash, and then go out and ride for the day. And so they kind of keep a really good eye on Prison Hill, and they're very appreciated. They are scheduling another one, I believe, for September to go back out and clean up additional dump sites that are at that location. We have church groups, so that bottom middle photo is Common Grounds Church. They wanted to do a youth activity. Unfortunately, due to all of the snow and rain we've been getting, a lot of the headstones at Lone Mountain Cemetery are sinking again. And so we are straightening them through volunteer efforts. And that one is a bit interesting because some headstones are just rock upon rock, and you just keep like digging down, and you just don't really find the bottom. But we were successful in straightening probably like 25 headstones. And so that's another project that we've been working on. And then that upper right-hand corner is from Bailey Pond. So we netted that in early April in partnership with Endow, and we were trying to catch the goldfish that are in Bailey Pond. It was very unsuccessful in that aspect. We did, however, pick up about 116 sunfish. So for those of you who don't know, Bailey Pond is a trout-only pond, and that's at the request of the tribe downstream. So we are removing species that the tribe does not want in the river system. And we are working on more education and outreach at Bailey Pond to please remove the goldfish. If you guys fish at Bailey Pond, please remove the goldfish and any other species that are non-trout. And we had Common Grounds Church. They're really amazing. They came out again. They had a Sunday where they offered 7 different service projects, and their congregation got to choose one. And so we had a big group who came out and helped clean up the Kuntz Trailhead, and we picked up a fair amount of glass that's down there. And that was just a really good adventure for the kids because they got to get out and see nature and explore. And I think, like for my part, one of the aspects of the program that I'm looking to expand is more interp with the rangers as well when we go out and do volunteer projects like this. The middle photo is Patagonia. They came out for 2 days straight and helped us trail brush the V&T and the foothill drive behind the hospital there. Certain sections of it were very overgrown, and so now it looks much, much better thanks to their efforts. And then we also partner with river wranglers quite a bit, and so in the far right photo there, that is the Boys and Girls Club. They came out and helped us establish a pollinator garden out at Buzzy's Ranch, and we've also been working with them on pollinators at Carson River Park as well. Probably one of our most stable volunteer programs right now is the Range Safety Officer Volunteers. So we have 11 volunteers. So far, they've served 326 hours this year, And they are just out there to help with the day-to-day operations out at the range, help take money for people coming in to pay to use the range, help clean up the range, and just oversee the safety guidelines out there as well. And they all report to Nick Ardem, who is our range coordinator. This is one of our newer programs, so it's the Silver Saddle Ranch Stewards. So this is a partnership between State Historic Preservation Society, that should say office, and Carson City Parks Rec and Open Space. We had 7 volunteers join us for a weekend training, a day of just sitting and learning about the program, and then heading out to Silver Saddle Ranch to see all of the historic sites that are out there, which it is a very amazing place. If you guys look between all of the sagebrush out there, they are out to monitor the historical sites about 3 to 4 times a year, and so it's not a very demanding program. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Just go out, in the cooler part of the year and monitor these sites and make sure there's no vandalism or changes in these areas. And so this just brings more engagement to the Silver Saddle Ranch, and hopefully we'll have some more volunteers doing some history talks out there, just so people have a better idea of kind of the history of that ranch. Muscle Powered is one of our power group volunteer groups. They work primarily with Greg Berggren, the trails coordinator. However, they do have a MOU with our department where they build and maintain trail out here in Carson City. And so I always like to give them a little shout out. And, a big part of where we as a department save money is with this organization. Because they are able to do so much in terms of providing quality trail for the community. So kind of looking at the monetary value from 2021 to 23, you can see it's slowly increasing with the hourly rates as well. So in 2021, we estimated around $93,000, $303. In 2022, $117,705, and then so far this year, we're estimating around $8,569 that volunteers have contributed to saving our department. So another part of my position is outreach and education, which is, I think, such an important part of my job. On the left there, I'm with Ranger Sattler. We went to Mark Twain School and talked to them about what it is to be a park ranger and also about the importance of volunteering. And the kids were way more excited about the pelts that we brought, but they still got to listen to us about our different roles within the department. I'm also working on a series of brochures. So I finished one that's about Share the Trail, which is a big campaign that Greg Berggren has been putting on. And so those can now be found in most of the bike shops. I'm pretty sure I saw them at Sportsman's Warehouse. So if you guys go to any of those places, you can pick one up and take a look. And then I also put together the department's monthly newsletter and send that out, and that goes out to social media, that goes out citywide, and that also goes out to everyone in ActiveNet, which is our recreation sign-up database. And then I also assist with managing our social media. I put a lot more icons up there than what we have. So we just have the Facebook and Instagram, but I help manage those, and those are another great resource for outreach and education for the public. So for me, looking forward, some of these are some of the things that I am working on, creating, tracking, reporting, and monitoring systems for our volunteer program. As I said, there's been 3 of us total. Everything is a little bit up and down in terms of what data we have. So me really just honing in and figuring out how to collect quality data for the volunteer program. Engaging with partners, figuring out ways in which volunteers can engage with other organizations, such as River Wranglers. Establishing a working database for our volunteers, so being able to really understand the impact that volunteers have in our community. Evaluating past programs, these would be things like Adopt a Trail. We still have a couple groups who go out and help do trail cleanups, so reevaluating those and kind of seeing how their impact really is playing out. We have a couple groups who are still doing Adopt a Park, so also looking at that and seeing what that looks like. And then we also had individuals who were filling mid stations, and so we're also kind of taking a closer look at that and figuring out if it's working alongside the schedule of our Parks Department. And then donations and sponsorships are another area that I am working on. And so, like, as I said in the beginning, I just want to get more people outside. I want them to be engaged with their public lands, and I want them to better understand the challenges that we as a department face on a daily basis. That means just more eyes and ears on the ground, more reporting, and hopefully just like more, the better ability to see how important these places are to our community. And so that's it. Thank you.
No, thank you, Jaylee. Good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
See if there's any questions for you here. I'll work to the left this time. Any of this on the left?
I included enough data.
Nice job, Jesse. Did you have something to say, Donna? Yeah, so do I.
Great job, Chelsea, because you really haven't been in the position for all that long yet. You've done a lot so far. The only thing I want to ask is, I know that on the Share the Trail, you've got that in both Spanish and English. I know because I have it at the bike valet if I get enough volunteers to pass that out. But what else are you doing to focus on in engaging more of the diversified community?
That's a good question. I think starting with like all of our brochures being in dual languages is a really positive way to start. If I could get volunteers that are bilingual in multiple languages, I think that would also be useful. So when they do engage with others in the community, you can hear like your native tongue. And so I think that's just a good starting point for now.
How about the right? Go ahead.
Like Donna, I also always have something to add, I guess. Hi, Chelsea. I'm Leah. It's good to meet you. I have a lot of questions. I'm not going to ask
Awesome.
them all tonight. Instead, I'm going to take your contact information.
Please do.
And maybe go to coffee or something, and
Yeah.
we can go over all of these things. But so do you have a needs list or an opportunities list for folks, or just internally, that we can look at for where you need volunteers or projects that need volunteers that we can look at in our networks and or even ourselves that maybe we can help fill?
Yes and no. I'm working on it is the honest answer. I think internally I would like to have a database where people can just like quickly plug in a dump site that they see, or quickly plug in like graffiti or other vandalism that they can report back to our department. I mean, obviously it always goes first to the park rangers, but a lot of that is also just getting more volunteers out into the community, getting more like eyes on the ground and having them be able to report back to us. So we'll start internally and kind of see what reports we're getting, and then that will help us like kind of branch out from there.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you. And just keep an eye out for my email. Or,
Yeah, will
or if
do.
that's your cell phone, I'll text you and we'll do
That is my office number.
Well, then I will not
Yes.
text it, but I will email you and maybe brunch or something. Walk in the park.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Great presentation. You know, something that you didn't talk about and yet you spent so much time on is during the month of May and Bike Month. And it just makes me think about how some of your work really overlaps not just in Parks and Rec and open space, but also public works. And so safe routes to school. And you were such a huge part of that coordinating. So another well done. And talk about diversity. I mean, that's how we get diversity is introducing something like bike riding and walking and all of that to kiddos in a school setting, and then that can lead to wanting to get outside and enjoy our beautiful trails. So
So in that aspect, my role with like the ride to reading event is more, it's on the muscle powered side than the volunteer coordinator side.
But
It's, we're,
but
yeah.
imagine that, a volunteer coordinator who volunteers. Who
Too
knew?
much, too much.
Any other? No comment? Well, you wear two hats, so you got problems there, but
I wear many hats,
It's-
yes.
I want to let you know you're in AmeriCorps' success story.
Well, thank you.
The dream is always to come in AmeriCorps and end up employed if you like the job. And guess what happened, Chelsea? So your patience paid off
Mm-hmm.
and you came back and wear all these hats for us. So thank you for that. And
Yes. And helmets.
and helmets, yeah, true. Hard hats, helmets. Oh, you mean helmets, okay. Yeah. Oh, there you go. All right, so I want to know, is the cemetery part of the 10% Parks and Rec, I hope? Or is the graveyard open space?
So the graveyard or the cemetery is a park, and for the 10% budget breakdown, Lindsay is going to have a much better idea than I do.
Well,
So I'm gonna pass that question off to her.
Lindsay Boyer, for the record, Open Space Manager. So basically, the way that this was budgeted is the money that we used to use to pay for the AmeriCorps came from general fund monies. And so all of that money was applied to this position, but it wasn't enough to sustain a full-time position. But since so many of the volunteer activities happen in open space, and we as a department felt like a volunteer coordinator is critical to both sides of the coin, we were able to fund the remaining portion of that. So the 10%, does cover Lone Mountain Cemetery and other places, but obviously Chelsea's working throughout the department. But yeah, that's how the cost breakdown.
Yeah, I don't expect you to break it down. I was just curious about how that ended with the 10%. That was just to cover the cost for a year or two, or however the budget for.
Basically, just, the general fund had been supplying those funds for the AmeriCorps, and so it was easy to just plop those into this full-time position.
Thanks, Lindsay, for explaining that. So you're going to have a tough time with one of your comments there, having done this for a few times. Having people record their hours is like pulling teeth to get reports from people. So I wish you well in that endeavor. Some reward system where you can pull it. They love doing the work, but they don't like doing 10 minutes of paperwork.
Oh, I understand that completely. Very much so.
So, but they don't
yeah.
understand how important it is that you have those hours to report that to groups like this and to justify how important your position is in this community. So I wish you well in that task.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Chance for public to come up and make a comment on this agenda item. Thank you. Come up, and then when you sit down and push the little button and give us your name, sir.
William McKissick, recent resident of Carson City, moved down from Tahoe. I spoke with you before with Carson Ridge Disc Golf Club, and we presented to you all. And I mentioned that I felt alone out there, still feeling that way. Just wanted you to understand that just myself alone, and Mike Polanski, we each have over 5,000 hours in the last 5 years. It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're committed to this, and after all those hours, nobody has yet walked the course with us. Nobody has seen what we've done. And we would really appreciate somebody coming out and seeing what we've done. There has been other volunteers, a lot of volunteers that have helped, that we've got an army behind us that are helping, that see the vision, love the vision. Working with Chelsea, we've got a website where we've got people logging hours, and we're really trying to work with the community to really, make these volunteer hours, work for the city and everything else. So, yeah, that's about all I have to say. Just please, somebody come out and say hi to understand the story and the vision of what we're doing out there. Because we're really trying, I've committed my life to this, to making Carson City and wherever I go a better place. Just totally committed to it. you know, from my parents. They've given this to me. That's what they did, and that's what I'm doing. So I thank you for
Well,
your
we
time.
can tell that, and we thank you for your service
Yeah.
considerably, a lot of time.
Yeah.
And we're listening about coming out and being invited, and maybe that's a program in the future for us to have a day where we don't have a quorum, or a way to visit there in a recreational
Yep.
way.
Call us, let us know.
We can work something out.
Yeah.
Mark?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Molly Walt for the record. I just want to commend you and all of those who worked on that course. During COVID, that was so unbelievably hard for our youth. And my family and I utilized this daily to get the kids out. And so I commend you for what you did.
Well, thank you. Thank you all.
Wait, hang on a second.
And just so you know, this time last year, I did walk the course. I went with a couple disc golfers and they showed me everything that had been done. And I was quite impressed. I don't know if I'll ever take the game up, but I was impressed with the hard work and the thought that went into the course. And they invited me to go out with them again to see all the improvements. So I would probably take them up on it. And if you want to take me out,
Well,
I'm willing to do it.
I was probably one of those people.
So,
I have gotten a haircut since.
so okay.
So that
So,
might be
so,
it.
so
But-
just so you don't feel left out, you know, I did go out there and was quite impressed with everything.
Well, thank you. Yeah, because there is more to it, to walk it with us, to understand why each thing was built and the reason behind it. It goes on and on. And it was Mike Plansky's and my vision in the means of professionally, this has never been done before, anywhere in the world. What is up there? Has never been professionally built.
It's just gorgeous to walk it. It's
That's
beautiful.
the
out
By the
idea.
there.
experience. Well, I've been
Captured.
told that it's ranked one of the best in this whole community,
Oh,
in the
no,
disc golf world.
It's, yeah, well, no, within 1,000 miles, it's number one. And that's in the desert compared to the ones that have views of the
Well,
lake.
thank you for all of that.
yeah.
And one of my, the guy I ride a bike with a lot is one of your big volunteers that comes out with his truck and helps you guys out a bunch. So
Oh, Pat?
yeah, Pat. So I figured
Yeah,
that
he's
Pat does
wonderful.
the work, so that carries my responsibility
Yes,
for him.
he's awesome.
Yeah.
He
Thanks
is.
a lot. I mean,
All right.
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on this item? Is the mic working? Is it green?
Now it is.
There, I wondered if his was on when he was there. Huh. Go ahead,
Oh, I
Robert.
just used up 10 seconds. Anyway, good evening, everyone. Robin Orloff here for the record. I want to thank Chelsea for all she's doing. And I would like to perhaps invite or ask Chelsea if she might be interested in getting involved in the OHV area of volunteerism if we haven't got a program already going. I'm happy to work with her, and I'm sure Greg and Lindsay would be happy to identify some areas. Litter, as Ranger Costello said, is not a problem really much anymore. Litter and dump sites, we should be very proud of that and commend all of us and our rangers for that. Riding unauthorized tracks where they shouldn't be, that continues to be an issue. And I think by identifying those and maybe going out and raking, which is what I've been doing, raking, vertical mulching, horizontal mulching, we don't want to encourage, if a track goes in unauthorized, for it to continue to be followed and the natural resources continue to be impacted. And it's not too hard to do. I think the partners, the OHV partners, have indicated an interest in that and a willingness. Just recently at the Board of Supervisor meeting, one of the young crawlers was interested. The working group perhaps could be reinstated. I think that's what one of our roles was, to work with each other to keep the OHV area intact. And, you know, I'm happy to do whatever I can to facilitate that and to take Chelsea out there with or without staff to look at some of the examples of what we'd like to fix and naturalize. And saying that, I'm sorry to bring up, but at the trials event, there was documented riding outside of the open area. that we brought up at the Board of Supervisor meeting and at this meeting, and we had hoped that perhaps that would be addressed, and that's something volunteers could do, go out and rake the tracks. And that hasn't been done yet, and I've been watching now. There's been more riding on those unauthorized track, connecting trails that shouldn't be connected. And I'm happy to go out there. I will probably do it now. I just wanted to see what kind of damage and ongoing unauthorized riding would occur, but I would hope that maybe we could address it either through staff or through volunteers, and I will do it as a volunteer, as I generally do. But it might be a program Chelsea could be interested in and we could institute. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comment? Yep, come on up.
For the record, Brian Kaplan, I'm Friends of Prison Hill. Thank you, Chelsea, for showing us in the pictures, but we do have another cleanup. Haven't picked a date in September yet. I've been working with Chelsea and Greg on that. As soon as I do have one, I'll let Chelsea and Greg know so they can let everyone else know. But kind of to speak to Prison Hill, we are out there all the time. We are not just the couple times for cleanup, picking up trash. Every time we're out there, we do enjoy the area. We love it. We want to keep it as open as possible. As a crawler group, we seem to get the bad rap for everything, but we're doing our best to keep everything flowing and open to everyone.
Well, thanks again for your service of the community, and I know it helps your cause, but it also sends a message to all your participants about the care of the facility. So thanks for that and your leadership to help that happen.
Do our
Thank you.
best.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, no, any other public comment? Last call, bring it back to the group. It's a discussion item only. So we're moving on to 5C at this point. Is there any reason I need to take a break for 5 minutes? Or are we moving on? If anybody raise their hand, I'll make the break.
We're good.
Okay, everybody's good. We're moving on. All right, 5C, discussion of possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for the Buzzies Ranch Management Plan and authorization to direct staff to initiate due diligence for water rights acquisition for 491.48 acres of city-owned property known as Buzzies Ranch Open Space. This is like Planning Commission here. APNs 100-071-25, 010-071-26, 010-071-27, 010-071-21, and 010-021-47 property. That was a mouthful. Lindsay, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Lindsay Boyer, Open Space Manager. So this item before you to talk about Buzzies Ranch and the water rights that are needed out there, it is a fairly complex issue with a long history. So I'll do my best to kind of walk you through some of that history and what brought us here today. So as you noted, Buzzies Ranch is a 491 acre working ranch. The primary use is cattle grazing, as well as all the open space benefits like floodplain protection, the aesthetics of the green irrigated pastures, wildlife habitat, all of that good stuff. The property was purchased through two acquisitions, one in 2007 and one in 2010. Both were partially funded with quality of life funds as well as state Question 1 grant funding. And a small portion of the ranch also came to us through the Oplama land transfer. So that's kind of what comprises that 491 acres. The State Question 1 grant app specifically highlighted the importance of those green fields as far as the aesthetics of the area, and really highlighted the importance of preserving the ranching history in Eagle Valley, as well as those open space values that I mentioned as well. And so that was kind of the whole purpose and baseline for preserving and protecting this space. But at the time of acquisition, Carson City didn't have enough money to support acquisition of the water rights that were needed to support all of those values, the irrigated fields, the wildlife habitat. And water rights really are critical to maintaining those values. So for some background and history for those who don't know, this property's been irrigated for over 100 years. So in the Great Basin, when a property's been traditionally irrigated like that, if you remove water from the property, it basically reverts into a giant noxious weed patch that is incredibly challenging to restore back to a functioning condition. Also presents significant fuel hazard issues, and just we lose that ranching history as well as the aesthetics of the green field. So maintaining water to be applied to this property is critical to maintaining the open space values to this property. So to kind of remedy that, Carson City entered into a purchase and sale agreement with both sellers at the time who still own their water rights. So basically, as long as they own water rights and apply them to the land, they're given the exclusive right to use the land for their agricultural operations, which is cattle grazing. If they were to sell their rights or move them off the property, basically those rights survive for about 4 years until their rights no longer are pertinent to the property. So with that being said, approximately 1,890 acre feet total is needed to irrigate this property. So that covers about 421 acres. So it's a 490 acre ranch, but not every part of it is irrigatable. Some of it's upland habitat, there's roads, there's a little headquarters area. So not all of that is just strictly irrigatable property. So you may have noticed in the plan, they reference a lower acreage, and I wanted to clarify that was the reason. So we know that we as Carson City need to find a permanent strategy to irrigate this property. It's been great that we've been able to work with the sellers for so many years to maintain that irrigation, but we know moving forward we need to have a more sustainable solution. So in order to do that, we kind of needed to get a baseline for the property. We needed to figure out how it should be managed. We needed to learn more about how much water was needed, where it was needed, what the priorities were, all of that. And so this management plan is kind of an effort to try to answer some of those questions. So I'll get a little bit more into the plan, but going back to kind of the water rights strategy and kind of the work that we've done related to acquiring water rights. So you are all probably aware now that we've acquired a SNPLMA grant. That's a $1.8 million grant to acquire about 694 acre feet of water rights that we would be able to apply to the ranch. These would be applied to what's known as the Ducks Unlimited area of the ranch, which is basically the center portion of the ranch. That's where we have the most viable wildlife habitat, as well as it was the site of a Ducks Unlimited wetland enhancement grant. They came in and did some earthwork to try to improve that area for the purposes of waterfowl. So that's kind of the first biggest priority, make sure that we have water to preserve and protect that wildlife habitat. So that SNPLMA grant, that $1.8 million will be applied to that section of the ranch specifically. But unfortunately, that will only provide us with about a third of the water that's needed to cover the entire ranch, that 1,800 acre feet needed. So we also have kind of some other plans in the works, working with Vidler Water Company, who's the identified partner on this whole water rights regime for the SNPLMA grant, as well as outside of the SNPLMA grant. So working with Vidler, they have helped by moving some additional water to the ranch. They have lots of water rights throughout the basin. And they had some water rights in the Carson Valley that weren't being utilized, and so they were able to move those down into Eagle Valley to be applied at Buzzy's Ranch, which is great. So that is kind of our more global strategy as far as getting the remaining water rights needed, is to work with Vidler Water Company to move some additional water rights to the ranch. And we're hoping to seek some kind of long-term lease to buy option, just to give you kind of a ballpark of what this may look like. If we're acquiring 694 acre feet for about 1.7 million, you extrapolate that out times 3, that's quite a bit of money. So it's going to be a lot of funds needed, but this is one avenue to try to secure the water rights needed while also not breaking our bank. So we are talking to them about kind of that long-term lease to buy option. So that's kind of where this item comes in. There's a lot of due diligence that's needed to start exploring that option, appraisals and things like that. And so part of this item really centers on getting your authorization to proceed with that due diligence that's required. In terms of how that all kind of couples in with the management plan, so as I mentioned, the management plan was really an effort to get a baseline understanding of what's needed to support Buzzy's Ranch from a management perspective, how much water is needed, where those priorities are, and also how the ranch should be managed as far as grazing, grazing rotation, season of grazing, all of that. We've kind of inherited a lot of the grazing strategies out there, but we know as a city, we could improve upon that. And so this plan was an effort towards that. For those of you who've been on the committee for a long time, we were calling it a conservation plan for several years. We've kind of shifted it. We're calling it a management plan now. Some of where that shift happened is originally when we started working on this plan back in 2018, we didn't know what we didn't know. And we've had to kind of figure that out over time. And so as we've had developments with Fiddler and Sniplama, we've been able to narrow down a little bit more of our strategy. So it's not a question of how much water do we need and where, so much as we know what we need and we know where we need to put it. So we are couching it as a management plan now. As far as some of the components within that management plan, it does focus on Buzzy's Ranch only. The reason all kind of comes back to the water rights and needing to solve this issue of not having water rights. And so the plan focuses only on Buzzy's Ranch. Our current leasee does also manage Silver Saddle as far as haying operations are concerned, and we would want that to continue into the future. But because Silver Saddle has a totally different suite of agreements and water rights situations and conservation practices and recreation pressure, we felt that Silver Saddle needed a completely different and separate plan. But the idea is that they all kind of would work in concert together with the individual who's managing the land. So in addition to kind of the irrigation objectives and the conservation plans, it also gives management considerations based on natural resource needs, like providing kind of a specialized management strategy for the Ducks Unlimited and NDOT mitigation wetlands, because those provide important wildlife habitat. It's important to note that this whole plan is not necessarily set in stone. It's meant to just be a framework, a starting point for staff, because we don't really have very intensive information about how we need to manage the land. This was a great starting point for us, but it's not meant to be a set in stone prescription. It's meant to change over time as staff do monitoring and have more information come in about the success of what we've been doing. A few other things I wanted to just note. Basically, the plan is what gives us the framework for moving forward with the water rights due diligence. I wanted to make that sort of clear, is that the whole action item here today hinges on our water rights strategy and what we need to do to move forward. And this plan provides really great backup for that. But I didn't necessarily mean for you guys to get into the weeds or the technicality of grazing this day or this season. Although I'm happy to get into all of that, but really wanted to emphasize that this is a tool to couple with kind of our overall water rights strategy. So I think that more or less covers all my points. I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right. We'll start on the right again. Any comments, questions? I know, I was waiting.
This one was very complicated, so I did ask Jen a couple questions before we got in here, and so I don't have any questions at this time. I'm glad that this is an open space issue more often than parks, because I don't want to talk about water rights and all that jazz. That sounds terrible. But I did learn a really cool job title in that RCI report that was submitted, and that is fluvial geomorphologist. So that's a career opportunity out there that I did not know existed, and now I'm excited about that. So thank you. Oh, sorry, it is a person who studies the erosion of rivers and the way they meander. Did I get that right? I'm glad you knew, Lindsay. And also SNPLMA is Southern Nevada, what's the rest of
Public
it?
Land Management
Public
Act.
Lands Management Act. Thank you. I had to text for that information too, because I was like, what is this acronym? And now I've talked too much. Thank you.
You didn't talk too much. And then there's Oplima, whatever the Anybody else on this side? How about this side? Jay?
First off, thank you, Lindsay, for actually hosting a tour out here and explaining a lot of this in person. Really appreciate that. If anyone has an opportunity to have staff give them a view on the ground of some of these areas that we discuss, it's well worth it. I actually had a question that was about learning things on here. It stated in here AUMs, assets under management, agriculture under management, animals
unit,
under management.
Animal unit.
Animal units managed? What
Yeah,
is it?
that, off the top of my head, I cannot remember. It's animal units, and then I can't remember what the M is. Management probably. Basically, an AUM is a way that you calculate the number of animals that should be put on the ground in a grazing context, so that you can really keep track of how much they're grazing and how that correlates with what the land can support. So an AUM is a grazing term that helps ranchers calibrate how many animals they have on the ground based on the production of the ranch.
Okay, thanks. That's all I
Months.
had.
It's months. I thought it was.
Lindsay, thank you. This was good and helpful. Just a couple questions for clarification. When you purchased the property and you indicated that you were able to have some of the water rights from the people we purchased it from, and in exchange, they get to graze. And so then so that's ongoing, and that was a multi-year. Then we received the SNPLMA, the money, the 1.8, and so we're gonna get that, and that's about 1/3 of the water we need. So we still need roughly, just lack of numbers, another 300 or no, another I don't know, let's say 1,200 acre feet, whatever. And you're gonna go forward to look at alternatives. So I think my first part of my question is, in going forward, does that mean we're not going to maintain the agreement that we have with the property owner that we have now with the grazing? Or we're gonna kind of keep that and see what other options are out there?
Yeah, great question. And I realize this is super complicated. So thank you for asking clarifying questions. So the situation right now is that the sellers, there's two different sellers. They all still own their water rights, and they have been applied to the landscape. A portion of those water rights have been optioned elsewhere, and the city has been paying to move them back as a way to show good faith effort of trying to keep those lands irrigated. And so for right now, we will continue to utilize those water rights as they are currently applied to the property. But this is a long-term strategy to get the city to a place where we have water rights that we own in perpetuity, because this land has been preserved in perpetuity. And so the water rights that go along with them should be owned and maintained by Carson City so that they can help maintain the land in perpetuity.
One pot, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Then, yes, I agree, and you're looking, you don't know what those answers are, but that's what you're gonna be looking for. One comment, and I like seeing NDOT in the mitigation, the wetlands, is that, is there more of an opportunity to work with NDOT? I am sure there's a lot of projects that are going to be coming forth in the future, and I don't know how much the Washoe wetlands, and I know it's different basins. However, is there opportunity to coordinate with NDOT to provide a place where they can construct wetlands for future projects coming up? Because that had been an issue in the past. We had troubles finding places that big enough
and opportunities. And if that's something that's feasible, it's worth considering, I think.
Yeah, that's a great comment. And I know that we have worked with NDOT, like the NDOT mitigation wetlands was one of them. I believe Fullstone Wetlands had a bit of a mitigation wetland component to it as well. So there have been some historic past projects, but I would love to key in with the right person, which I'm sure you might be able to direct me in the right direction, to, be on someone's radar for those types of discussions.
I think that could be a great discussion, because one of the challenges that they had, or we had before, was that you don't want an acre here and an acre there. It was pool the resources, and then it helps really become a wonderful thing. And so if there is opportunity following the water rights basins and ideas like that, but I know that there's a lot of work coming down, and just something that might need to be considered, even if it's a small amount to work through that. So I can help you there. Thank you.
The other thing is the reclaimed waters that the city is committed to private sources. Are we able to claw some of that back to use for ourselves?
So related to the reclaimed water use in Carson City, there's a whole plan that was actually recently updated to that effort, and it included kind of the long-term strategy. So the build out for Carson City is coming down the pipe in the next 20 years, whatever it may be, and so that's going to really increase the amount of effluent that we're producing, and where are we going to put that effluent. And Buzzy's Ranch and Silver Saddle have both been identified for that additional effluent. So I can't speak to what's currently happening, but I know for the future and for the build out of Carson City, we have been identified, and that's another great way to fill in the gaps here. But it is a long-term strategy.
So flush more often.
Yeah.
Anybody change your mind? Want to talk? Okay, so I'm in a quandary because I have a whole lot of comments on the plan. And I don't, the way it's written as an action item, it's more about the water rights than it is about the plan, to me. So I don't, it says draft on it, and I liked some of Dan Graytek sent some notes in that I appreciated it, which I echo some of those. But how best would that happen, rather than you sit here and go through about 35 comments on the page by page with the plan? But nobody else seems to have that need but me, so I'm in a quandary.
Yeah, great question, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I know you always have good points. So just a little bit more information of like why we're even bringing this here to this joint meeting, since it's obviously traditionally an open space item. There is a lot of momentum that's happening on the Vidler side as far as them being able to move some of the water rights down, and we want to be able to start exploring the due diligence that's needed to start working with Vidler on that piece. And so we didn't want to wait until August or September to bring this before you for authorization to take it to the board as the next level. And so it was worked out well for us to bring it to this meeting. So I appreciate your patience hearing an item that isn't, traditionally something that comes across your desk. But the plan is in draft form. I wanted OSAC and had to have an opportunity to look at it. And so we can go through it now, or if it's more efficient for you and I to sit down together and talk about some of those comments, we can do that too. I want to capture those comments.
Well, that was going to be my proposal, but I didn't know if we're outside the box here if we did do that, but it would only come back again as a draft still. But it doesn't mean anything I say has to happen, it just is a comment. So if that's agreeable, I have no trouble doing that. And to work that for discussion, not necessarily direction.
Is that allowable?
Ben Johnson, Senior Deputy District Attorney for the record. After conferring with the Parks Director, because it is in draft form, and I think, as Lindsay mentioned, the main goal is to get the the authorization going for the Board of Supervisors. I don't believe that the next action would be for the Board of Supervisors to adopt the plan. So I think that you can work with Lindsay off record to go over your concerns, and then potentially bring it back here before it goes back to the board for final. Because I think the idea would be to get comments from the board about what changes they want to make, and then it, depending on when that's scheduled, it could potentially come back here or to both committees for final review, I guess, before going back to the board for final approval, if that makes sense.
I understood that. If Lindsay understood that and Jen understands that.
Just to jump in on what Jen was, or what Ben was saying, Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director, the real action that the board's going to take is direction on the water rights. That's the focus. The plan is important, but it's a tiny piece of the puzzle, and it's really more of like a resource document that staff had RCI prepare, and it's kind of a tool in our toolbox, if you will. But we wanted the board and for you all to see that plan so you understand the context and how that water is kind of all related. But I know typically we come here with like a park master plan and we're really in the details of all that. This is sort of an opposite situation. We really want to have the context for the water needs for this area and really start moving on that so we can build a financial plan and a long-term plan to make sure that that ranch is preserved.
That's kind of understood, so I was confused when RCI wasn't here making a presentation, so that explained part of that. So if that's agreeable, then I might make a few more friends on these people here to keep them here for another 3 hours. Wouldn't make me very popular. So do we need to change the words in the motion maybe? About the due diligence for water rights acquisition and leave the part out of the Buzzy's Ranch management plan?
Mr. Chair, absolutely, you could
Okay.
do that. That way, you're giving the authority to go forward on the due diligence, and then, you're obviously not recommending the approval of the plan because you haven't had a chance to offer concrete, substantive
Okay, great.
comments.
So I'm all comfortable with that. So before I bring it to action item here, I've got to call for public comment on this specific item. Oh, sure. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you.
Hang on a sec, Dan.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you had to say because it is interesting how different brains work. Because my brain really focused in on the due diligence. And so to pursue the due diligence needed for long-term lease and what you're talking about in terms of that big picture. At the moment, we have access to that water, or the owners have access. And it's how I'm understanding it, what do we do in the future to maintain this as a viable wetlands? So anyway, but I appreciate that because it's just, that whole process of working through how to move forward.
Well, I'm glad to hear that from one of the Board of Supervisors, that process. That helps me feel more comfortable about this next move, and Ben really helped that along. So thanks for being here, Ben, and thank you. So public comment, go ahead, Dan, you can come back up again. Yes.
Sorry.
You're all right.
Thank you. Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I sure appreciate Lisa Schuette's supervisor's perspective on that. It's mine. Are we the owners of the property, but not the water rights? Just basic, yes or no? Okay, so who are the leasees that we're talking about? The people that are ranching it now, that are actively involved with putting out butchered beef and pork or whatever they're, is there actually a slaughterhouse on that property? My thing is, I just don't know enough. And when I'm looking at all of this, it's has all sorts of things to look at. And I obviously, not obviously, sometimes I'm more up to it than others, but I couldn't get through this. And I don't think myself as just a general public have any clue why we bought land without water rights. And what we got from what I've learned here is only a portion of what would be needed to actually run a viable ranch. Is that true? Or have a wetland? I'm just really hoping that you'll put this to better thought. If it's considered a draft, I'd like to have time to just digest this and then go on to the final form of it and have a lot of questions. Sorry, couldn't resist.
So I'm watching.
But,
We're gonna put a wall up there, Daniel.
well, it's just such a shame. We have this
I understand
opportunity.
that, but if there's a process sometimes that's not friendly, it can be adversarial, so we have to be real cautious.
Well, if I got adversarial, you asked me to leave and I would be a gentleman and do so after I told you what I thought. But the deal is that the fact we should take more opportunities to communicate and directly. All this fishing around for things is tough. And it just takes more time, I think, than if we just went straight forward. What does this mean in English, in layman's term? We've got a piece of property that's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous from what I've been able to be on. How much of that is accessible to the public? I'd like to know that. How much is intended to be wetlands? I'd like to know that. I'd also like to know, are we going to include when we lease it if the person decides to move off the property? Is there a time limit of their ability to stay on that property? What's going, those basics that I just don't see here. So I really would appreciate more information to help, educate me on me. Give me a set that I can understand to decide if I'm for or against or what parts I'd like to suggest and what I would. So I appreciate that very much, and I appreciate your bringing up in a way that I could sort of relate better. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we take that as a part of the minutes, Denny, so we're listening to you, so thank you. All right, bring it back to the group for a motion, but as long as everybody understood that we dropped the words approval of the Buzzy Ranch Management Plan out of the motion and leave the rest in? Anybody ready to make a motion for that?
I have a question.
Sure.
On the park side, is this just your guys'?
I think we both, if it's an action item for a joint meeting, I'm assuming we both have to vote. So I'm looking to the Park and Rec side.
I don't know.
And I said, and I shouldn't have asked for that. She should have asked for that. That's the clarification you probably needed right there. Huh?
Thank you, Mark.
You bet.
I'm clear.
Thanks for keeping us on track.
Let me look at it.
So I haven't gone this side yet. Oh, you have more public comment? 1 second? That'd be a world record now, Robin. Yeah.
Robin Orloff. I'm just wondering, since Denny has a lot of questions that sound legit to me, and Mark, you have a lot of questions, that maybe you could both get together and discuss it with open space.
That was more in the second, Robin, but thank you.
Just a suggestion.
She's got the timer. I always wondered who was the master of the timer. Now I figured it out. Yeah, I thought it was Dave sitting in the audience. Yeah, I have to. All right, so I'm back to, you go ahead and ask Parks and Rec then. I'm sorry.
All right, what am I asking him? Oh,
Oh, the motion with that clarification of leaving those specific words out.
all right, how do we feel about a motion? Leah?
I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors to authorize staff to initiate due diligence for water rights acquisition.
All right, there's a motion.
I second.
All right, a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries on Parkside.
Oh, we have to do both
Yeah,
sides?
well, you can't either vote there.
I thought we were doing a
That's okay.
overall.
Well, there's one eye not in the mix there. It's
Okay,
all.
I'll move on this.
Okay, you're going to make the motion?
I
Great.
move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval.
Microphone on.
No, it's red. Thank you.
I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of to authorize staff to initiate due diligence for water rights acquisition.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second from Susan. Any more discussion? Go ahead.
Yes, just quick. So the way I'm looking at this is that, to me, the lead effort is the water rights acquisition. And the management plan helps define the water that it is that you need. So to me, that management plan almost is a living document. It's a back and forth, because if you have water rights that have certain criteria on them based on how you manage that ranch or how we use the ranch, that may affect that acquisition of water rights, or we may say no if we don't. So they're going to be working together in a way, given, you know, if Mark has the comments, but I would hope that this document is still flexible enough to give you the most flexibility for the acquisition to meet that fundamental due diligence of acquisition.
Yes, I believe you have a great analysis of that. So even outside of absorbing Mark's comments and incorporating those into the plan, because that's just an effort to make sure that what you guys want to see reflected here is reflected. But beyond that, I imagine that this will be a living document, because each year we're going to be monitoring, and that monitoring may yield results, and that results may change what we're doing on the ground, or it may influence our practices. And so each year it may be, you know, a living dynamic document, but what it does is it sets a baseline for management, which we currently don't have. Yeah, thank you.
All right, call for the question, then all in favor say aye. Aye, oppose, carries unanimous. We are beyond 5C now, going now to staff updates for discussion only, the director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I just wanted to update you on a couple things. The Board of Supervisors did approve the Prison Hill Master Plan at their May 4th meeting. We're going to get that up on the website so you have access to the final copy. They did have a few edits at the board meeting. We have some full-time new hires to announce, which I'm very excited about. Our Senior Natural Resource Specialist, Marina Lovejoy, has started. Head lifeguard is now Albert Hartgrave. He was promoted, so he's been with the city for years. He's wonderful. Our new recreation coordinator for youth that'll start July 1st is Dawn Bateman, also an internal promotion, which is wonderful. We desperately need that. Parks maintenance worker, Farrell Bonner. Supervising lifeguard, another internal promotion from a part-timer, so another great one. Now full-time is Andrea Urban. And then our new open space maintenance worker is Joe Steele. We do still have several positions open, all seasonal positions. There are some vacant spots, so tell your friends, get your kids to sign up. Youth, sports, aquatics, park maintenance, range safety officers, all seasonal opportunities are open and available. We have a full-time park ranger position that was new for the next fiscal year, and I do want to thank the health department. They worked with us, and part of the position funding is from indigent funds, so we'll focus specifically on the unhoused population and really trying to have some outreach and education with that group. So I really appreciate, you know, the participation from the health department working with us to try to be creative in how to fund these positions and not only look at the general fund to fund everything. We also have a full-time park maintenance worker position for open space, and then an arts and culture coordinator position is open as well. So check out the website and encourage your friends to apply. A lot of great opportunities in the department. Thank you.
I don't know if you saw it, Jen, but there was a national news piece talking about Santa Harbor having to close the beach because they can't get staff up there, which they would take the National Guard to stop people who want to get on the beach there probably, but I couldn't believe that you can't even get seasonals at a park like Santa Harbor that people just love to death. So that shows the critical shortages of staffing in parks and recreation, for sure. Yeah, it was prestigious, that's right. So that was quite the story. Okay, let's see, now we're at member announcements and requests for information. So I guess we'll start on that end and come this way.
Microphone. I just would like to thank the Board of Supervisors for their budget action in approving the rehabilitation of the Centennial tennis courts. They added an additional $410,000 from what we offered. And so all 8 courts will be fixed up this year, and that's really exciting. The tennis community thanks them and you. Thank you.
Thank you. I did have a question on the director's report. Can I do that really quick?
Certainly.
Just, is there an update on how the cleanup is going on the damage to the park from the winter storms and how our trails look right now? I know there was a lot of issue with like runoff and erosion.
That's a great question. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. It's sort of in progress. I wanted to compile a report and give that to you, but we still have flooding going on right now. So the river is high, it's fast, and then we have a lot of damage. There's a lot of things that are underwater, so they can't be assessed right now. We are compiling a whole report for the city manager, and then I can bring that back to you. I can tell you that one of the fields at Centennial Park that had significant damage from the flooding has been repaired. We hired a contractor for that. We did have some cart path damage that needs to be repaired at Eagle Valley Golf Course. There's a lot of trail damage, especially along the river corridor. There's significant sediment at Mayor's Park and a couple of our other parks that are sediment basins by design. However, you have to go in and we have to make sure that that will still function. So a lot of those repairs may not even happen till the fall before we get our next big winter. Hopefully another big winter. We want to have those. But I'll probably report that back to you at your guys' next meeting because it just would be incomplete right now.
And then one, I guess, announcement, it's coming from a member, but it's not my stuff. The legislature in their second special session passed a stadium infrastructure bill, and part of that has a community benefits program where if this baseball team does come to Nevada, then they provide funding to all the little leagues in the state. And so I wanted to make sure that was on our radar to make sure that we get funding for the Carson City Little League Baseball. So just keep an ear out for that if that baseball team does come to Nevada, even though they're in Clark County.
I just wanted to say I got to participate in a aquatic trail tour, Carson River today. We entered the rafts up at Markleyville and then exited Runestraw area, so 22 miles on the water. Just really, the flow of the river is fantastic. Just incredible, but just the whole idea of our water and our water systems and recreation and trail maintenance, because we also, we saw some trails along the route and just how recreation opportunities really do overlap. And so I really appreciate Shane Fryer and Carson Water Subconservancy. And thank you, Jen, for some of the staff. They were able to come along, and that was fantastic. So
Was there a stop at the hot springs?
there was.
There you go.
There was a stop at, but this was interesting. So talking about oversight and OHV and all of that, right at the hot springs, there are some roads that it's not a part of a planned area. And there was a truck coming down very, very steep, and it was a bit hairy. We were all just stopped, and this person was able to manage it, but had doubts, and it was just a frustrating situation anyway for many, many reasons. People sometimes feel that they can drive across the river and then they can't, and then you have all the pollutants from the oil and the fluids from the vehicles and risk to folks trying to get these vehicles out of the river. So it was really quite an interesting tour and a little sideshow there.
Sideshow for you. Anybody else on this side? We'll go to this side. Nope. Yep.
I just wanted to say that at our last meeting, we had quite a discussion on our strategic planning effort, and I summarized the summary of actions for the OSAC items. And so I'm going to work with you, Mark, and work with Lindsay about making or tracking them, just that we're going to do what we said we were going to do.
Thank you.
And one of the items also at the last meeting was that I volunteered to help reground the OSAC's core mission statement, and I have volunteers, Robert and Sam, and I haven't done anything with that because I did this. Okay, that's my excuse. But I will be on it.
It's not due till next meeting.
Thank you. That was my announcement. Thank you.
Nothing on Donna. Okay, so future agenda items, I guess you guys can have your discussion and then we'll have ours.
Do any of the commission members have any
Did you-
agenda items they'd like to see on future agendas, other than what was? Leah?
Yeah, I guess I would just maybe to be included in the director's report, just an update on the process and the progress for repairs from all the environmental damage. And then if there's any updates from the volunteer coordinator on creating that database or the needs assessment or, ongoing issues or areas for volunteer opportunities, if any of that is available, I would love to hear it in the report. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would just like to second what Leah had to say. And really, I'm all about reaching out to nonprofits within the community and inviting them in. And so just hearing, about Boy Scouts or the Tales to Trails or, Muscle Powered. And there are just so many opportunities. And I think back also, or, the Mutt Mitts and an active outreach to have some of our local service organizations sponsor not only keeping the Mutt Mitt stations full, but maybe even helping with the cleanup, so.
I think it's your turn.
Okay, any future agenda items? I got a list here that I'm actually, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And I know there's a chance our meeting may not be in August, maybe in September, but it doesn't matter which one. So the memo or the graph that Susan put together actually has the awards, the mission statement, the matrix. And then there was some discussion about inviting NDOR to that meeting, the new director. So all those items would be on that meeting for sure, but we'll have plenty of time because she sends me a sheet before to make sure all of the things that Susan has on there are in the action items. So that, anybody else have anything else besides that? If not, I'm ready to move on to the next item here. We ready? Okay, so this is final public comment section, that you have another chance to come up.
Robin Orloff again. And this is a comment related to future agendas and other discussions. But in our last meeting of OSAC, we had quite a discussion at the end about possibly agendizing some concerns that some of us expressed in public comment. And I believe that that was something that was going to be discussed with staff and then come back to some of us that had expressed concern about it. This has been a pattern also with others we've taken out on the project, that there would be discussion with open space that we had hoped would include us, but at least would come back with feedback after that. So I just wanted to see if there was some follow-up, what happened with those discussions, where we're going with them, if it might be an agenda item. And sorry, Donna, if I'm boring you with saying this again. But it all seems to fall into a black hole, and I'm concerned about that. I'd love to include, I'm glad to see Friends of Prison Hill here, and I would love to include the OHV community and the working group as well that was established to discuss the project and to be a part of it, and new trails and upgrades and everything else. And I'm just wondering where we're at with that and if that could be discussed perhaps in a future agenda, or maybe explanation as to why it won't be discussed, just as a common courtesy to those of us who are concerned about it and have brought it up. Some of you are new members, and so it's new to you, and it might be educational And we also discussed a site visit on the OHV area, 121. And I think there was a discussion, sometimes it's included as part of a meeting, it's before the meeting, so it's not an open meeting law violation. I think the Nevada OHV Commission might do something like that, but our DA would know more about that. I don't know how that would be arranged, if anyone would be interested. That seems, we haven't been able to organize that. But I'd like to, include, get staff, more dialogue going on, staff, OSAC, and I love the fact that Friends of Prison Hill is here and that the rock crawler at the Board of Supervisor meeting was interested in kind of a community effort with our concerns. Thank you very much.
Denny French, I ditto Ms. Orloff's statement. Very involved with considerations on Prison Hill, but I also want to bring up something that was brought up your last meeting. It was Matrix, and it was brought up so often, and I didn't know what it was. Matrix.
Matrix.
Metrics. Thank you.
May.
Yes.
M-A-T-R-I-X.
There you go.
M-A-T-R-I-X.
Did a little study. It's 3 phases, usually considering planning, engagement, reflection. I think we have some of those aspects and most of the things that we're involved with as individuals every day, but as a board and as commissions and such, sometimes I'm not sure we reflect enough. We're taking facts, we're doing the due diligence on that, but some of the engagement is not necessarily there because it's not necessarily our personal interest, but because of our positions or our concerns, we have to make it part of it. So it was good, but I couldn't understand half of your conversation that day because I didn't know what the word meant. And so I had to get myself engaged with figuring out what a matrix was, besides a movie. And so thank you on that. I have a concern about the insect count. I do a casual, public, just person insect count. When I walk, I look. We are short on bees, and when I found bees in any kind of number, I found that the plants that they were on had already closed up for a season, almost as if spring was over, and their flowers were no longer fresh, or they were sometimes pungent in their fragrance, but that they didn't have nectar or a life to them still. They were more brittle and ready to finish up, as if they were ready for some sort of drawback for summer where they would put most of their energy into leaves. But the count is down, and I would like to check. I'm so sorry, I'm just not a table person. The deal is I would like to, Lindsay's she's got the reputation of knowing bugs and insects and such, and I'd like to have her suggest perhaps an opportunity and an agenda item to go over our need to make sure we're preserving areas. You can't have bees come to an area that's not going to have food for them. And we have destroyed so many of the areas that were natural habitats for so many of the pollinators and such. So please consider that in every move you make about property. Don't give anything away. It's always a home to something already. And it can be a home to more if we consider how to plant it for bees or whatever we want to draw in. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Denny. Okay, so can we adjourn as a whole body, a group versus individually? Yeah, so all I do is call for adjournment then. So moved. We're adjourned. Thank you. Good meeting.